Good afternoon, folks. This is Fred Campos, owner of DFW Website Designers. It is a happy Saturday, March the 5th, 2022, and this is episode number 330 of your 3 business tips at 3 o'clock in and around 3 minutes. Solopreneurs, business owners, we've been in a week-long series about sales. We've talked about the sales process that you need to do. When you're small, sales are pretty much going to fall on you, the business owner, until you're big enough to hire a staff that maybe focuses on sales or have resellers or other partners that are going to do the sales for you. And you probably know more about the product or service that you offer than anybody else. Well, in that process, you're ultimately going to come to the very end of the process, which we call closing. And closing has about a couple dozen steps of techniques that you can do where you actually get the exchange to occur with your client or customer, where they sign on the dotted line or they write you a check or they give you the credit card number in order to begin the sales process. So since this is so important, we're going to focus on those. And I told you there's several dozen closing techniques, but here are some of my favorites. We're going to talk about the assumption close, the ProCons close, also called the Ben Franklin close, and the class picture close, also called the puppy dog close. Business tip number 1, the assumption close. This is my favorite close to use and one I use all the time. Even from the moment I talk to the customer from the very first time, I always assume that they're doing business with us. When I meet a customer, they call for the very first time, I said, thank you so much for choosing us to do your website design. I'm already setting the precedence. If I get an email from them, I'm like, thank you for choosing my company to redo your web design. I just assume from that. When I go through the presentation and the demo and meet them and take all the notes and everything else, I end that by going straight into the contract and saying, okay, I'm ready for you to buy right now. What's your credit card number? And my close rate is about 80%. And about 50% of the time under the assumption close, where I just assume the close, assume that they're picking me, assume that they're going to buy, they'll give it to me. And so that's my favorite starting point close. Business tip number 2 is the ProCons close, also known as the Ben Franklin close. In this particular close, let's say I do the assumption close and they push back and they say, you know what, Fred, I really got to think about it. I'm not sure I want to move forward with your website today. I'll say, hey, no problem. But before we wrap this up, can we write down a few notes for me? And I said, tell me all the good things, all the reasons why you'd want to move forward with this. And I'll write that under the pro section. Draw a little line, kind of like the Ben Franklin system. All the pros and then all the cons. And then I sit back and show them and go, okay, you have 15 reasons why you need to move forward with this and only one reason why you don't. Let's go ahead and move forward with this because there's a lot more pros than there are cons. Sometimes that will help us move over the hump. That's called the pro-cons close, or also the Ben Franklin close. Business tip number 3 is what I refer to as the class picture close. I'm a parent of 3. Picture day will occur. They'll take pictures of my kids and they'll send home developed pictures in a packet. And they say, hey, you know what? You don't have to buy any of these, or you can write us a check for some of these. Well, I have the product in my hand. It's hard to say no, and many a times I've written a check. This is also known as the puppy dog close. You take your kids over to a pet store. You're undecided whether you want to buy that dog. They say, you know what, take the dog home for a week. If you don't like it, bring it back. Well, you know what happens. A week later, you own a dog. It isn't like you're going to bring it back. So that is another very, very effective closing technique. Again, there's many, many, many closing techniques that can be used. These are just 3 of my favorite. Please investigate some other ones that may be of use to you. But again, that's the assumption close, the pro-cons close, and the class picture close. This is what I'm studying this week. Anything I'm studying, I throw over the fence to you because I want you guys to be awesome. Now go back to sleep.